What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the after credit scene. It has been a hot second since I've been able to be back with you guys. Holidays and life going on and just all kinds of things, work and everything else. Not to mention not a whole lot of Marvel content in the last probably month and a half, 2 months. So hope you guys had a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. And let's start talking Marvel stuff, specifically Ant-Man and the Wasp: QuANTuMANia. I got a chance to see it before the weekend. And I want us to spend a good bit of time talking about everything about it. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. We are well on our way to 200 subscribers, but we need your help to do it. We're also on TikTok and Instagram and have a website as well. So check all those things out and get involved where you can. If you are just here for spoiler-free stuff, Easter egg stuff, or Marvel theories, multiverse stuff, after credit scene things, check the description below and click on one of the time links and you can jump right to that portion. So let's get right to it with a spoiler-free review here. Right off the bat, I don't know what all the hate is about. I have a theory as to why people, particularly critics and other people are kind of hating on this movie. Made a good bit of money this past weekend, and I think it will continue to make money. However, people are comparing it to Thor: Love and Thunder or to Eternals in terms of story or letdown or all those kind of things. Again, I think people are missing the point. I think there's a whole lot of expectations that are way too high out there for what Marvel should be, could be, particularly what it should be rather than what it could be, because we can go a million different directions with this. But Phase 4, I thought, did an excellent job of introducing us to a lot of different characters with an end goal in mind. I think a lot of the things that happened in Phase 4 are going to pay off well into Phase 5, well into Phase 6, and moving forward, more so than the things that happened in Phase 1 with Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor. We're getting introductions to those characters, and the big payoff was really just watching them all come together in Avengers and then creating a big bad and then throwing them into a battle with that big bad. By the time they got into Phase 2 and moving forward with Thanos, they knew where they were going, but it was a little bit of a hodgepodge at first. This is not that. And so all the different things we've gotten from this point, Loki, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, even though people disliked that as well, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, all of these different things are leading towards something that's going to have a bigger payoff. A lot of these characters, a lot of these stories introduce secret worlds or secret people or secret environments that we never knew existed, more so than just introducing a new character. And so I think all of those things are leading towards, with this introduction of all of the other things going on in the quantum realm, are leading towards a clash that is coming and some fallout from that as well. And so I think be patient, enjoy what's out there. You have this balance between, do we make something that is just fan service for the people that have read the comics and know all the deep stuff, or do we do something that has a balance between that and a place where new people who are coming into the Marvel Universe can get involved, can enjoy a movie, can understand it just as a standalone, like, hey, this is something fun to go see. That's a hard balancing act, and I think this movie really pulls it off well. As far as enjoyment level, I think you're going to love it. This is a movie that I normally don't go into trying to go see IMAX 3D and all those kind of things, but this one, I bought the extra ticket for the IMAX 3D and was not disappointed. The VFX in this movie are fantastic. The worlds that they're creating, the depth, and the even though you knew that, even though everything felt kind of normal in terms of characters growing and shrinking and all those kind of things, you were always aware that you were in a totally different environment. Your characters felt out of place in a world where everybody else looked different than them. And so in that regard, the world building was phenomenal. The story was very simple. I think that's probably what puts a lot of people off too. Starts off very quickly. You know where you're going, you know where you're headed, but you're looking forward to that. and how's it going to wrap up. And then showing different pieces and kind of splicing back and forth between this story, that story, these things. I really enjoyed it. It never felt forced. It never felt choppy, like some people have said. It was just a really good story. It was a whole lot of fun. Definitely worth some rewatches. And there are some movies that I've watched that I don't really want to rewatch that. I've seen what I needed to see. And so, but in this regard, this one was fun. It was colorful. It was funny. And funny in ways that didn't require Paul Rudd to be the comic relief. Because he has a lot more serious moments in this movie. And so there were a lot of different interactions there that I really enjoyed. Getting away from the spoiler-free review, let's get into some spoilers here. Let's break down the story to kind of talk about where this fits in the timeline, the different characters that are involved. Right off the bat, like I said, this story starts off, as you've seen, little bits, advertisements, different things in some of the Disney Plus shows. We've discovered that Scott has written a book. He's got a podcast. He's very well known. People were asking what happened with the Avengers. How did we all come back from the blip? And Scott is here to help us all explain that and help understand it. And so people know who he is. And it's afforded him a lot of unique opportunities. In true Scott fashion, his book is very cheesy and has some dad humor to it and some blandness to it, but it's introducing people in the civilians in the Marvel universe with a side of the Avengers that they didn't really have before. And so in that regard, him handling his celebrity is actually really kind of funny and interesting. Then very quickly you're having a conversation with Cassie, Hope, Hank, Janet, all talking about how Cassie is interested in the quantum realm. She's trying her best to make sure that what happened to Scott and what happened to Janet doesn't happen again. And as researchers and as a family of researchers, Cassie has taken up that mantle, and she's studying and learning, and that has repercussions, and they all get sucked into the quantum realm. And in doing so, they're split up. And so Scott and Cassie kind of have their father-daughter moments throughout the movie, and they're looking for Hank and Janet and Hope, and they're kind of having their own family, not squabbles, but just revelations of what happened while you were down here, Mom, and what went on, and you didn't tell me this was all down here. And so kind of these very natural revelations, come to pass about Janet's time down there and what she did and why she didn't want to talk about it, and feeling lucky that she had back the time that she had, and all those different things were so simple and so natural that I think for a lot of people it didn't feel like there was a big problem. And so none of it felt forced, and none of it felt like people were being pushed into anything, except that the quantum realm is so weird, and you're just immediately struck by all of the weirdness. And so I'm sure for a lot of people it was off-putting to have to be okay with that so quickly in comparison to the characters that we know and love already. But they get pulled into the quantum realm. They kind of go off on their own journeys. We meet Krylar, who is played by Bill Murray, that Janet had a relationship with, and he was helping her. We find out that Janet was there longer and was able to see the arrival of Kang, where he had been exiled. We find out later, exiled by the Council of Kangs, or at least by Immortus, Rama-tut, and who most people believe to be the Scarlet Crusader. But those versions of Kang exiled him because of his refusal to not only want to work with the rest of the Kangs, but to want to remake the multiverse in his image alone. And so they kind of have to get rid of this rogue outfit. So there's some setup there that we'll talk about in terms of multiverse things here in just a little bit. But all of that leads to Kang being able to, us finding out that there's some, as Kang rose in power, that he took over large portions of the quantum realm, and he is enslaving a lot of people, and that he needs Scott's help or someone's help to go and get the power back to get his time chair working, where he can then escape the quantum realm. And Scott agrees to do that in response to Kang saying he's going to kill Cassie. And so he goes and does that, and we get a really awesome sequence that kind of gives us a little bit of multiverse explanation in a really interesting way, where something that Kang calls a probability storm, where all the different versions of what could happen are happening all at the same time, and Scott is interacting with all these different versions of him, which affords a really awesome scene where Scott gets to be his own ants as Ant-Man and create this pile of Scott Langs that then are able to get the power source back for Kang's time chair. And so just all those little things that they kind of sprinkle throughout it are really interesting and a whole lot of fun. MODOK, we get a throwback to what happened to Darren Cross at the end of Ant-Man whenever he was crushed or destroyed. We find out he was sent to the quantum realm as well, but that Kang picks him up and nurses him back to health, but that his body is disfigured, where he has this very giant head and very little arms and legs, but that Kang puts him in a full-on suit, and in true Darren fashion, because he is more interested in power, and Kang gives him that power. He's loyal to Kang, and he does whatever he's supposed to do. And so I did enjoy that they played off MODOK as that he was this scary being to everybody in the quantum realm, because he didn't look weird or different to them, but to our Ant-Man family, not only did they know who he was before, but he's very off-putting, and he looks very comic accurate, his face stretched the way it is, but the fact that the Ant-Man family there makes fun of it and pokes at the absurdity of it in the same way that we would poke some absurdity at it, kind of lets us in on the joke and makes it okay to be like, yeah, this looks weird, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. Did not bother me at all. And using him as some of the comic relief, particularly with him and Cassie during the last fight scene where Cassie says, just stop, don't be this guy, in a way where probably Cassie was the only person that could actually have that kind of conversation with him, because Darren remembers trying to kidnap or hold Cassie for ransom in the first Ant-Man movie, and now Cassie is able to fight back and have the opportunity, more so than anybody, to get her revenge, and she's the one that says, just stop being this person. And then Darren making jokes at the end that, oh, he got to die an Avenger and blah, blah, just the goofiness of it. I actually thought was endearing, and it was a lot of fun, and just kind of those lighthearted moments always make me laugh. The whole movie actually really felt like a good origin story for Kang, establishing his mythos in a way that that they never really did with Thanos. Now I know that added to the fear of Thanos when he showed up, because he shows up and he wins so quickly. But Kang, just knowing that this storm is brewing and knowing these things are out there and being able to watch the movies and go, this can't possibly be going well for our people, because you know that something's coming, I really enjoy. I'm looking forward to when they twist it on its head, where suddenly we are in Kang's world now, where the multiverse breaks open, where things go bonkers. And in that regard, everything that happened in Phase 4 is a really good primer for that, because everything seems pretty calm, except for some personal squabbles and some things that you can call problems with Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange a personal problem. They're not these big world-altering things. It's very humanizing things, and what happens in between the big bads. It's not just going from one big bad to the other, but they eventually have to stop and deal with their own lives. And so you get a lot of that, which I think is great. It's character building that they don't have to do, because a lot of people would say, just go on to the next big bad guy. But then if you did that, you also have a lot of people saying, well, there's just a formula for Marvel, and they just go from one big bad guy to another. No, trust that they are telling the stories that they want to tell. And see that as a good thing, that they're able to take their time and tell these stories and introduce these characters in really unique ways. That being said, I thought this movie, even though billed as an Ant-Man movie, was a really good way to show Kang and to highlight Kang, who Jonathan Majors knocks out of the park, just with little facial movements, and you can see the anger boiling underneath, even though he talks in a way that is sometimes calming and almost reassuring, like, hey, you can trust me. You definitely know you can't trust him. This movie did a great job of introducing that, and when you see him later, or when you see, when he pops up in different movies or other things, this movie will be not only required viewing, but it will be something that we can look back on and go, oh yeah, he was locked in the quantum realm for all this time, and here's who locked him there. And so you're getting some backstory, and you're getting his baggage without actually having to dive super deep into it. So I really liked all of those things. And then I thought the movie was going to end with Scott or someone being stuck in the quantum realm again. And so them being able to defeat Kang, I wonder if that Kang is actually gone or not, or if maybe they killed him there, only to find out that he's going to pop up later, and that this movie is going to be more of a, not just a prequel, but also a bookend, so that everything that happens in the middle ends up becoming this big loop, that Kang is not gone, but he ends up being someplace else. He pops up later, the Avengers actually defeat him, and then he ends up being exiled again, over and over and over again for eternity. Like, that's the way that they defeat him. I don't know, that's a really early theory, but it wouldn't surprise me if some of these movies end up getting, not revisited in that way, but end up being mirror images of themselves on the other side, phase 6, phase 7, those kind of things. Other than that, ending with everybody back home, Kang seemingly destroyed or sucked into what I assumed was either death or a probability storm, because he gets sucked into his own energy bubble, just like Scott went to go retrieve the bubble. Maybe Kang is in his own probability storm, and now there are lots and lots of Kang the Conquerors, and that's what causes, the big multiversal war, because there's not just one of him, there's a bunch of him. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that, but I don't think that version of him is gone. But everything is seemingly safe for now, and even Scott questions that as he's walking down the street at the end of the movie, thinking, wait, did I, they said something was coming, did I do this wrong, or maybe something really bad is coming, and he kind of says, don't worry about it, which is kind of Marvel's way of saying, yeah, something bad's coming, enjoy the ride. I loved all of those things. I liked the way the movie went. Again, I didn't understand the hate. I loved all the different quantum realm characters in those different fields. There were definitely some, just when it started to feel very Star Wars Cantina-esque, they kind of flipped it on its nose a little bit, and it did feel like its own place. So as far as world building and there being these other universes and these other places that you can recognize now, I loved that. I really thought that was great. Let's get into some, again, we've already talked about a little bit, some MCU theories and future stuff. Let's talk about the multiverse right here for a minute. All throughout this movie, they spent a lot of time talking about the multiverse and giving you little pieces of it. And as opposed to what they had to do in Endgame, and this is where I'm going to draw my comparisons, when they started delving into time travel in Endgame, you had to have a whole section of that movie devoted to, well, let's figure out how time travel works. Well, let's go and visit Tony, and Tony's going to say, here's why it can't work, and Tony's going to work it out on his own and give you some little visual images of how time travel works and how it kind of flips around. And then Tony figures it out, and he comes up with a device, and so here's the explanation for how we can do this, but then he explains to them, just like Hulk has to explain to them, why we can't just go back and kill baby Thanos. And they use other movies as references, like Back to the Future or like this or Terminator or whatever. And they explain that time doesn't work that way. Even in a linear time scale, that me going back here and changing something will not change things for future me. That we are in a stuck, fixed time frame that you only find out later through Loki episode 6 is because He Who Remains has protected or sealed our universe off so that it cannot be affected by and we cannot affect the rest of the multiverse. You get more confirmation of that in Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness because on Earth 838, I'm hoping that's the right number, where we meet the Illuminati. That version of Christine actually says they've known about our world for a long time, even though we didn't know about them. They've dealt with incursions for a long time where we haven't had to deal with any of that stuff on Earth 616, or whatever you want to term it as. They term it 616 in that movie. That's what I'm going to call it for now until we get references otherwise. I don't care what Miss Marvel and Kevin Feige say on Twitter. Kevin's right. The stuff in the MCU is correct. Earth 616. That's where we're going for now, just so we're all on the same page. However, you get all these different pieces and these confirmations, but you get them in little bits throughout Phase 4 and now moving into Phase 5 that they had to give you all at one time in Avengers Endgame to kind of explain what they were doing. The multiverse is a much bigger concept, and rather than just throwing it at you and saying, hey, everybody needs to go watch this, I think they're going to give us little pieces of it to explain what's going on in this movie, in these moments. And then when it gets to the big movies, the big Avengers crossovers, they'll probably go back through and re-explain it again, which is going to be good because as crazy as this is, you're going to need it. In QuANTuMAnia, you see Kang talking about the multiverse, and he uses imagery that we last saw in episode 6 of Loki, where there is one timeline, one fixed timeline, and then there's a branch off of it. And the version of Kang the Conqueror that we get, even though he understands that time is not that way, and he's outside of time and space and his mind works differently, he is bound by the realm in which he's in the quantum realm. And so he is seeing time the way that all of us, or the way that the other characters in the MCU see time, right up until Sylvie kills He Who Remains at the end of Loki season 1, and everything fractures. And so, and our world is now unprotected, and there is now access to all these different universes, in whatever form that takes. Whether He Who Remains, was physically the one keeping it together, or just that was the start of a path that allowed those protections to no longer be in place, and thus all these different things start happening. And so we're getting little bits of it. And so we learned a few more things. Not only did we get some of that imagery, but language was used. Kang, while Scott is in the probability storm trying to get Kang's energy source put back together, and he is in that probability storm, Kang is talking to him, which one gives us an idea that in the midst of all these different multiverses, or all these different weird things happening, there is some way to be able to communicate with either a particular person or all of them at the same time. We don't know that part for sure, but at least with one particular person. But he uses the term alternate dimensions and parallel realities, and he talks about them as different things, not the same things. We have parallel realities and we have alternate dimensions. And what that looks like and what those things mean, I have yet to be fleshed out. But in one of his conversations, he's talking about all these different things, and he mentions alternate dimensions and parallel realities. So they are not the same thing. It's not, these are all combined together and this is a synonym for the other. They're clearly other things. Now, whether that's like dark dimension, quantum realm, Talo is a dimension. Those are alternate dimensions within our current dimension, that we live in. the visible dimension, or whatever we want to call that, and then parallel realities that would be the multiverse. I don't know, but all of these other things are at work. All of these different layers are at work. I have a video that you can probably look at up here somewhere about what the multiverse, a better way to describe the multiverse moving forward. And I made that video about a year ago, before Doctor Strange, actually a couple years, year and a half ago. And it still holds true today. The theory, the metaphors have not really fallen apart yet. So multiverse as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is definitely a video you want to go check out. It's up here somewhere. You can click on it, and also down in the comments below. Kang says things like, I don't live in a straight line. He talks about skipping to the end. He talks about what's coming, and he says me, a lot of me, which could be different variations of him, or could be a bunch of Kang the Conquerors. And within the multiverse, anything is possible. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I loved his explanation of, you are talking about the probability storm. He tells Scott, you are inside Schrodinger's box and you're the cat. So, you know, if you're not familiar with Schrodinger's box, Schrodinger's cat, it's this idea that in coming up with a theory for quantum physics and quantum mechanics, this guy Schrodinger puts a cat in a box with some radioactive material that is depleting. It doesn't deplete at a regular rate, so you don't really know if or when the box that has the radiation in it is going to open or will open in such a way that it kills the cat. And that's a very quick explanation. There's a lot more technicality to it. But the theory there is, in looking at that box, is the cat alive or dead? Us as observers outside the box have to say it is both, because until we open the box, we do not know if it is alive or dead. We cannot say with any certainty it's alive or it's dead. We don't know. It's only from the perspective of the one inside the box whether we know. Now, using that metaphor and using the things that are going on at that time, Kang is actually able to talk to Scott. Scott is inside the box and Kang is outside the box. Kang knows what's going on inside the box because he's describing it to Scott. So clearly his mind works differently. Scott is able to then relay back out to Kang or anyone what's going on inside the box. So us being able to, in the future of the MCU, being able to observe and interact and theorize about what's going on within probable realities, either at different times or all at the same time, is going to be a really interesting idea to move forward with. Whether it's in some kind of experiment or whether it's different versions of the same person, different variants communicating with each other across different realities and saying, oh, here's what's going on in my reality. Here's what's going on in my reality. Hey, I took care of Kang in this one. He took care of Kang in this one. I took care of Kang here. However that works, they did give you a little snapshot of it if that becomes something they use later on. Those were really interesting moments that I think Marvel explained so simply that people flew right past it in this movie, that are going to have bigger implications later on. And I think that's the magic of the way they're writing this, especially with regards to the multiverse saga. It's going to be a lot more interconnected than you realize, because by the time they get to these bigger stories and these other multiversal things that just are twisting your brain, you're going to be able to follow it a lot easier than you thought you would if they just threw it all at you at the same time, and we have to just, oh, we got all these other stories, but they don't connect, and now we just have to, mull over this one movie over and over and over again and just, dissect it forever. I think you're going to be able to look back and go, oh, this happened then and that happened there. This was really, really great. Those are just my theories. Again, we can have a much deeper multiverse discussion, and I probably will, in the form of TikToks and other things, as some more things get released and as I kind of mull it over a little more as well. Easter eggs. Let's talk Easter eggs before we talk end credit scenes and get on out of here. This is not an exhaustive list of eggs. These are the eggs that I noticed while I was watching the movie, and a few that I kind of pieced together in some of my own personal research. If you want to look for some other Easter egg videos, please, by all means, go and patronize some other people on YouTube with views and likes and subscribes. That would be great. That would be awesome. There's other people that do a lot more deep dives into that. But these are the ones that I saw that I think are important, that I thought were really cool, that you might find interesting as well. First one is just the quantum realm itself. Being able to see it in a way that we haven't seen it before. The quantum realm itself is a massive Easter egg. It's something we've been wondering about and wanting to see on a bigger level rather than just passing through it like we're going through time, or seeing it as Scott's mind fragmenting, or something we see just for a moment while they're going in Ant-Man 2 to rescue Janet from the quantum realm. We get to see people, we get to see worlds, we get to see cities, we get to see different types of creations. And so you have characters that may or may not be the Micronauts that we that the Marvel comics have talked about for quite some time, that are quantum realm characters. You get the buildings and the creatures within the quantum realm that all have different looks that resemble things that are either subatomic or microscopic, like proteins and viruses and DNA strands and amoebas and all these different things that are microscopic or smaller, that these buildings and these people and these creatures are modeled after. And even them asking about things that they don't know about, oh, what are ants? What are these things? Within the comic books, there are places within the quantum realm. The quantum realm is vastly infinite. And so you have different cities, places called subatomica that the Fantastic Four have a lot of interactions with. You have a place called Homeworld, and you have people called Homeworlders. You have a city called Chronopolis. A lot of people speculate that the place that Loki and Sylvie go at the end of Loki is Chronopolis. I don't think so. It is a place outside of time, and Chronopolis is also a place outside of space and time. But one of our bonus scenes happens outside of space and time. And so I think that that's more likely a, quick snapshot of Chronopolis, even though you only see this one little arena, than the end of Loki. I think that is more likely to be a place called Castle Limbo. If you look online and look at some pictures of that and look at the stuff at the end of Loki, they kind of have some similarities. I think that's more likely to be what we've seen. But the quantum realm is full of those kind of Easter eggs and those kind of different characters and different things. And just being able to see that and be able to go, oh, look at all this different stuff out there is really, really cool. Cassie Lang, again, in and of herself, is her own Easter egg. She is, yet again, another character that is being sprinkled in as a young Avenger. Whether you call her Stature or Stinger, she has her own suit. She's learning how to be a hero. And eventually, all these young characters are going to have to interact. You've got the characters from Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Elijah's son, who ends up being a character called Patriot. You have, I guess Shuri could even be considered a young Avenger if you wanted to. But you also have Kate Bishop from the Hawkeye series and several others that are being pieced together in there. Ironheart that are going to be integral in that story, even though Marvel hasn't greenlit a movie. They're talking about it, and they're getting ready for it and trying to figure out where to put that, because they're introducing these characters and they've got a plan. So those things are coming. At one point, Janet calls Hank Ant-Man, and even Hank gets his own hero moment whenever he shows up with all the ants that he has been communicating with in the quantum realm, which I thought was an excellent, I won't call it Easter egg, but whenever everybody gets sucked into the quantum realm, Hank has just explained that he is creating smart ants where they can talk to each other, where they can interact and do things. And he's enabled them to have the same technology that he has in his ear, and so they're able to talk to each other. And you find out later on in the movie that because time moves differently in the quantum realm, the ants got dropped off in a different part of time, and they were able to build their own massive society and have all kinds of technology. And so now you have ants as a resource, ants as an ally in the quantum realm, which is going to be fantastic moving forward as well. And that ends up becoming something that ends up turning the tide in the battle at the end of the movie, which I thought was fantastic. But Janet calls Hank Ant-Man well before that, and then at the end of the movie, he gets to be Ant-Man again. David Dastmalchian, who in the first two Ant-Man movies played one of Scott's friends in their ex-con business, ends up being not in this movie in person, but he is the voice of Veb. He's the voice of the gelatinous guy whose bodily fluid of some kind, which is gross, ends up allowing them to be able to understand what's being said in this movie. And then he gets shot, and he's the one that is obsessed with holes, which was a really funny thing as well. But that's the voice of David Dastmalchian, who was in the movies earlier, so he actually gets to be in this one as well. And I thought that was a really cool way to include him in that movie without and so he's now two characters in the same universe, even though one is just a voice and they're two different people. I get it. The little things here, the costumes that Janet ends up giving Hope and Hank so they can blend in better. They all have goggles. Hope's goggles are not goggles. They're actually a sight bar, and her goggles look eerily similar to a Cyclops headband that we see Cyclops wear in the X-Men cartoons and even in the Fox X-Men movies. The multiverse images from Loki are definitely an Easter egg as well, because they're the same images and they're giving you some more information there. And I got to go back and confirm it for sure. I'm 99% certain. I'm certain enough that I'm going to say it here. The restaurant that Hank and Scott and Hope and everybody eat in San Francisco at the end of this movie is the exact same restaurant that Shang-Chi and Katie and their friends eat in at the end of Shang-Chi, where Wong shows up and takes them back to Kamartaj. And so it was just, when they were eating there, I looked and I thought, I think that's the same restaurant. I'll go back and confirm it again. Somebody can tell me for sure if they want to in the comments below. But just a little like, hey, aren't they in the same place? Maybe as just a simple reminder that, hey, they're both in San Francisco. And so that would be really cool to find out as well. That would be some interesting crossovers for sure. Let's talk about the after credit scenes, because there's a lot of Easter eggs there as well. First off, our first after credit scene, the Council of Kang. I know it's the Council of Kangs or whatever, whichever you want to call it. I like calling it the Council of Kang, as though they are one entity. But you first see, the whole movie, you hear Kang saying, they exiled me, they exiled me. And it would be an interesting twist if they were not just the Council of Kang, but somehow the Avengers somehow. But for this movie, as a closed loop, the Kang says that, they exiled me. But then in this bonus scene, you get 3 of the Council of Kangs actually talking about exiling him. They have, but they also say they've killed the exile. So in retrospect, they never actually say they're the ones that exiled him. You just assume that they call him the exile, so maybe they're the ones that exiled him. I tend to assume that as well. But they being the Avengers. But the Kangs that are talking about that, 2 of them for sure. Immortus, who is the oldest living Kang and is more of a negotiator, except when it comes to what benefits him. And then he's a little more of a tyrant. And then Rama-tut, who is a version of Kang that goes back and lives in Egyptian times. And I think is a dead giveaway that we're going to see Moon Knight fight a Kang at some point. Because who else other than that person to deal with all those different entities but Moon Knight. So you have those 2 Kangs, and then one that a lot of people are trying to figure out, is it a variant of Iron Lad, who is a young version of Kang that ends up being a hero, Or is it Scarlet Crusader, which I don't think they look anything alike except for the little mark on their head. Could be a different version, could be something they're playing with. But that's the theory online. And then Immortus says, who did you call to deal with this issue? And they say all of us. And then you see an arena filled with all the different variants of Kang. And so that's going to be interesting moving forward to see what they do with that, but getting a little bit of a snapshot of all these different versions and what the end game is there. He Who Remains tried to protect our universe from the rest of the Kangs. The rest of the Kangs, is the Council of Kang just a group of Kangs that say, hey, there's so many of us, we need to find a way to live at peace without killing each other, but we're going to have to get together and talk to each other. And if anything happens that threatens all of our existences, then we'll get together and we'll deal with it. But Kang the Conqueror was one that went rogue, and so they all had to deal with him. But maybe that's the rub there, and you're going to get a lot of crossovers where some versions of Kang are helpful and some versions of Kang are not. And how do you know? And what happens when they fight each other? Just all these different things, different directions they can go, and none of them will be wrong, but there will be plenty of them that people go, oh, I wish they would have done this. And so it remains to be seen, but that was an excellent bonus scene. I think as far as bonus scenes go, I'm having a hard time finding a bonus scene that had as much implication to the future of the MCU as that one did, in terms of introducing different characters. Maybe after we see Guardians 3 and we see Adam Warlock, maybe the Guardians bonus scene where Aisha is saying that she's creating Adam Warlock, maybe that's going to be a big one. But I think the implications and the payoff for this one are huge. It's a great time to put, at the beginning of Phase 5, to put there's something big coming type of scene. And so I think they utilized that as well as they could. Then the second one at the very end of the whole credits, the credit roll, is another variant of Kang called Victor Timely, who in the comics ends up creating his own little protected world called Timely, a town, where he can kind of manipulate time in secret, which again, I think was a big theme of Phase 4. A lot of secret things going on, hidden worlds, hidden people, hidden, ideas. But Victor Timely is kind of doing a presentation where he's talking about time travel and all these different things, and Loki and Mobius are in the crowd, and Loki is having to explain to a version of Mobius that doesn't know Loki and doesn't know anything about Kang, that's him. And so that, I think Loki Season 2 is going to be amazing. If this is the direction they're going, it made me look forward to that. I can't wait to see that. It's going to be fantastic. And seeing Loki go from big screen to TV screen, back to big screen again, just shows me how right Marvel and Disney were in doing things the way they're doing them and consolidating them the way they are and fraying off the loose ends of Hulu shows or Fox shows or all these different, let's bring them back together, and they're going to do it in a way that I think is very, very well done. In my research, I even found a theory that said maybe in Deadpool 3, with some of this multiverse stuff coming into play to get Deadpool into our reality, into our universe, that maybe Kang is somehow involved in that, and he is responsible for killing off all of the Fox universe X-Men and those types of characters. Would be an excellent way for Marvel and Disney to say, we're done with all these people. And they could bring through whoever they wanted to bring through and utilize variants of them in whatever way they wanted to use them, because our main storyline from our 616 vantage point is that Kang took care of all those people. So if they pop up other places, great. If they don't, they don't. But you could use them however you wanted to, and it's at Marvel's discretion again. And so all of these different theories and the multiverse of possibilities means that whatever story they tell is going to be the right one, but it's also, for a lot of fans, going to be the wrong one. And anybody can go off and write their own version, and it would be just as much canon as anybody else's version because it's a multiverse. So nerds, geeks, dweebs, write your own fan fiction. It can be considered Marvel canon in the overarching multiverse palette, in the overarching multiverse canvas. It can be whatever we want it to be. But at the end of the day, I trust Marvel. I love Marvel. I love what they're doing. I am excited about it, and I still think it's a lot of fun, and I'm along for the ride, and I really love this movie. And I hope you guys too. Hope you guys do too. Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me what you think about the movie. Tell me what you think about the Easter eggs, about the theories, about the multiverse, about what's coming next. I'm excited to hear from you. I'm excited to be talking to you guys again. We're going to be back when Secret Invasion drops. We're going to be on TikTok in the meantime. We're going to talk about some other movies and all kinds of other things. We're going to be back with some other goodies and some other types of shows and things here on YouTube that are going to be vastly different than some of our reviews and stuff. So stick around for those kind of things. And in the meantime, guys, when the next one drops, you know you can catch us right back here. Later.